Tansei, I'm Chris Nachkate. Welcome to APTN National News Daytime. Thank you for joining us. A bill aimed at eliminating existing discriminations in the Indian Act continues to wind its way through the Senate. Bill S2 is currently being reviewed by the Senate Standing Committee on Indigenous Peoples. It seeks to end sex and enfranchisement-based discriminations that continue to exist within the Indian Act. On Tuesday morning, the committee heard from witnesses that Bill S2 is flawed in its current form. Cora McGuire-Surrett is the CEO of the Ontario Native Women's Association. She said the bill needs to do away with both the second generation and 1985 cutoffs once and for all.
Remove the second generation cutoff by returning to a one-parent rule for transmission of status. By denying status to generations of First Nations women and their children, the second generation cutoff has deprived women access to participate in band governance, services, and opportunities. Continuing the second generation cutoff will result in the numbers of registered Indians declining over time, eventually leading to the extinction of status Indians in entire communities.
The federal justice minister was in Manitoba on Tuesday to share more information on the recently introduced Bail and Sentencing Reform Act. He says the legislation will bring harsher penalties to those who assault first responders on the job. APTN Sav Jonesa has more.
The federal justice minister, Sean Fraser, says recently tabled Bill C-14 includes more than 80 concrete measures to do two things.
One, to make it harder for violent repeat offenders to be granted bail. And two, to impose harsher penalties on those who commit some of the most serious violent crimes.
Among many amendments, the proposed bail and sentencing reform legislation will address the growing violence against first responders across the country through changes to the criminal code. Fraser says crimes against paramedics, firefighters, and emergency workers will be treated more seriously at sentencing.
If we're going to count on people to keep our community safe, the very least we can do is to ensure that the law returns the favor. People who are subjected to assaults when they're trying to save lives, when they're trying to fight fires, do not deserve to be seeing people who may assault them treated with impunity by the criminal justice system.
Kyle Ross is the president of MGEU, the union representing Winnipeg paramedics. A recent survey by MGEU found that just under 25% of Winnipeg paramedics say they face violence on the job every day. Ross points out that though harsher penalties for crimes against first responders may help, it ultimately requires a worker to get assaulted before there can be action.
Right now we have workers off the job. We have many injured paramedics right now, which is causing them to be short-staffed. And if we can find ways to keep them on the job, that'll help Winnipeggers. And right now, our workers, they're being injured all the time.
He says there needs to be more investment in preventing the violence, but exactly how is a big question for this societal issue. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Regina Board of Police Commissioners has announced the termination of Farouk Sheikh, the city's chief of police. The decision allows an investigation by the Saskatchewan Public Complaints Commission. The commission investigates complaints against law enforcement agencies. After reviewing 2 complaints against Sheikh, the commission found Sheikh using his position to influence a member of the police board was unsubstantiated. However, a second claim of discreditable conduct against Sheikh was substantiated. The commission found he engaged in inappropriate private communication with the complainant about sensitive topics, including his contract, and failed to take responsibility for his actions. That was enough for the Regina Board of Police Commissioners to let go of Sheikh with cause, saying the decision was necessary to uphold the integrity of police leadership. Sergeant Tommy Prince was the most decorated First Nations veteran of World War II and the Korean War. He was a member of the famous Devil's Brigade, and while he did a lot to protect this country, it didn't protect him when he came back from war, as he faced a lot of racism and discrimination when he came back home. And as APTN's TR Wheatley shows us, people are now celebrating his life just days before the military acknowledges its past.
Sergeant Tommy Prince of Broken Head Ojibwe Nation, who received numerous awards for his bravery in World War II and the Korean War.
People packed the small community hall in Petersfield, Manitoba on this cool October 25th. It would have been Prince's 110th birthday. Sergeant Tommy Prince Sr. was born here in 1915, and for the first time, Petersfield has come together, along with his family and First Nation, to have a ceremonial celebration. The Anishinaabe man died in 1977 while living on the streets in Winnipeg. He's buried in the city's Field of Heroes. His son, Tommy Prince Jr., says it would have been a special day for his dad if he was still around, as no one really celebrated his birthday.
My father would have been happy, would have been dancing, and just, happy with everybody.
Junior is one of 6 siblings. All of them were split up as children and taken during the 60s scoop. Karen Braun Prince is the youngest.
Fortunately, my older brother and sister were able to meet him later on in his life before he passed, and I never got that opportunity. So I'm a little bit sad about that, but I read so many wonderful things about him. Google is great.
Prince was one of 3 Canadians to get both the Canadian Military Medal and the American Silver Star. He earned 11 medals in total from both World War II and the Korean War. This celebration of life and achievement is also an acknowledgement of sacrifice, not just overseas, but also what Prince and many other Indigenous soldiers faced while here at home. It is happening just days before the Canadian Armed Forces is giving an official apology to those who have served, who have faced racism and discrimination while in the military. Broken Head Chief Gordon Blue Sky is a relative of Prince.
I think Sergeant Tommy Prince is a big example of that racism,
Like Prince's kids, Blue Sky was scooped too and ended up in the U.S., where he joined the Navy from 1992 through 1998. He's felt the racism firsthand, but says others before him, especially Prince, had it harder.
Any command he was a part of, he was always second in command, because he could never be first in command just because of his race. And so I think that has rippling effects even till today. Even back then, he died in the streets, not being acknowledged to the extent that he should have been. His family had to work tirelessly to get not only his name restored.
I'm still fighting for some recognition that he deserves.
Now Junior is looking to get his father's rank changed from sergeant to lieutenant senior grade, and he's looking to Manitoba's premier for help.
I wrote a letter to our premier, Bob New, asking for assistance from the family. 3 times he was given a promotion and he never received it. I have letters here.
Canoe acknowledged the letter at an unrelated event, but makes it clear it's a federal fight.
The military is very protocol driven, and it is entirely within the purview of the federal government. So at the same time that I want to support the Prince family, I also don't want to maybe step on any toes that's going to make it counterproductive towards that goal. But yeah, we'll definitely help.
Help the Prince family welcomes as they fight for a father who fought for us all. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. And to read and watch our stories, you can go to www.aptnnews.ca. And you can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X, and hopefully one day Facebook again. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. 2 First Nations in BC are attempting to stop a major resource project. We'll bring you an update right after the break. Welcome back. 9 years after the first Pacific Northwest LNG terminal was cancelled, the Premier of British Columbia has now greenlit a new project spearheaded by the Nisga'a Nation. However, 2 other First Nations are instead going to court to try and stop the project. With more on this, here's Ryan Cunningham in Vancouver.
The original pipeline in 2014 under TC Energy Corp, a Calgary-based energy company, was to supply gas to the now cancelled Pacific Northwest LNG terminal. When regulatory and environmental reviews delayed the project, Malaysia's energy giant Petronas sold its majority stake to the Nisga'a Nation. The Nisga'a-owned C. Lissam's LNG project are working with Rockies LNG Limited and Western LNG out of Houston, Texas. They are proposing 2 floating facilities that would export 12 million tons of liquid natural gas annually to Asia-Pacific markets. In September, BC Premier David Eby announced the project was greenlit, saying the Indigenous-owned project led by the Nisga'a Nation is a treaty nation that has control over their jurisdiction. And Federal Energy Minister Tim Hodgson also praised the decision as an example of the one project, one review system which relied on the province's assessment. The fast-tracking of the C. Lissam's project has mounting opposition from Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups. The Lax Kw'alaams Band and the Metlakatla First Nation have outstanding Aboriginal title claims in the BC Supreme Court for the Mylor Peninsula, where a transmission line is required to power the facility. They claim this project could threaten their Aboriginal rights and title in perpetuity. However, the Metlakatla First Nation argues that assessment relied on speculative economic concepts to justify the project and allege the Minister of Environment and Climate Change ignored the project's adverse impacts. Environmental activists have expressed concerns over increased tanker traffic, and the Gittinyao hereditary chiefs say the terminals would be devastating to the environment, including critical salmon habitat. Meanwhile, the government and C. Lissam's project team have not yet responded to any claims in court. Ryan Cunningham, APTN National News, Vancouver.
The Yukon will be heading into a territorial election next week. While political parties have been busy on the campaign trail, First Nations community organizations and school boards have their own priorities they want the next government to be aware of. Our Yukon reporter Sarah Connors caught up with them to see what issues are on their radar.
In the Yukon, election season is in full swing, and it's the final week before voters head to the polls. As political parties near the end of their campaigns, First Nations, community organizations, and the Yukon First Nations School Board are also laying out their priorities.
I just really feel that this is going to be a very critical election in moving forward.
For Chief Donna Hope of the First Nation of Nacho-Nayakdun, mining is top of mind. A heap leach failure at the Eagle Gold Mine last year caused hundreds of millions of liters of cyanide-contaminated water to escape into the surrounding environment on the First Nations traditional territory. Nacho-Nayakdun has been vocal in its call for a public inquiry into the mining disaster, arguing it showed serious failures in oversight and regulation and wants the next government to fully commit to one.
We do have a huge history of mining, and I think that we can do a lot better, especially in today's standards.
Housing and homelessness is a major concern for housing nonprofit The Safe at Home Society. The latest point-in-time count found at least 145 people were experiencing homelessness in Whitehorse, 83% identified as Indigenous. The Society hopes to see strong investments in support of housing, something it says will help alleviate pressure on things like shelters, healthcare, and the justice system.
The Yukon prides itself on taking care of each other and being a caring, giving community, and that needs to extend to words and also how we vote.
The First Nation School Board is using the election to springboard its call for a better funding formula with the Department of Education. It says its current funding agreement with the department isn't transparent, fair, or sufficient enough to fund operations, forcing it to seek loans and draw from reserves. The board's chair says it wants predictable, timely, and equitable funding so First Nation students can thrive.
We are looking for a premier and a minister of education that is committed to work with us in a genuine and transparent way.
These community leaders say regardless of what party is elected, only time will tell if they'll take real action on the issues that matter most to them. The territorial election will take place on November 3rd. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Voting is now over in Nunavut. Almost all of the polls have reported in, and it looks like there's going to be a lot of new faces in the Legislative Assembly. This election saw a roughly 37% voter turnout. There was a fairly even split between new MLAs and veteran incumbents. Voters had several issues they want addressed by the new government, like affordability, homelessness, mental health, education, and immigration. At least 3 ridings will see a judicial recount because their races were too close to call. Once the new and returning MLAs are confirmed, they will elect a premier, cabinet, and House Speaker at the first sitting of the new legislative session scheduled for November 20th. We now want to tell you about this week's web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, are governments doing enough to acknowledge historical injustices against Indigenous peoples? You can answer yes, no, or unsure. Go to our website at aptnnews.ca to have your say. The questions will be on the right-hand side of the homepage. Award-winning author Mangashik Pewis-Steckley from Ontario is up next. We'll be right back. Me, Gwetch, for staying with us. Charlottetown 10, Halifax 10 and sunny. Cartwright 10, the Grand River 6. Montreal sunny and 8, Quebec City 8. Toronto 9, Sault Ste. Marie 8. Sudbury 8, Thunder Bay 7 and partly cloudy. Churchill 3, Norway House 3. Princess Harbor 6, Brandon -3. -1 in Regina, Yorkton -4. 0 in Meadow Lake, La Ronge partly cloudy and 2. Cloudy in Peace River at 2, Fort McMurray 3. Calgary 9, Medicine Hat 12 and sunny. Sun's out in Vancouver at 12, Kamloops 3. Prince George 8, Fort Nelson 6. Old Crow -10, Dawson -3. -1 in Wrigley, Trout Lake +6. Inuvik -8, Colville Lake -2. -5 in Baker Lake, rain in Chesterfield at -1. And Iqaluit -1, Aglulik -7 and sunny. Mangijik Pewastekli is an award-winning Anishinaabe children's book illustrator and author. He frequently collaborates with other writers but his author-illustrator debut titled Buju Hello was released last year and has just been named as one of this year's First Nation Communities Read Awards, an initiative of the Ontario Library Service. For more on the book and the award, we spoke with Mangijik earlier. Mangijik Pewastekli, thanks for speaking with us and congratulations on your latest Read Award. You've written a number of award-winning children's books. What can you tell us about your latest book called Buju Hello?
Bonjour, hello. This is my latest book here. It is a story for toddlers and their parents to read together. Basically to just introduce the Anishinaabe language to young children and then get them introduced, to a very, just a small vocabulary of verbs and nouns. There's a few different animals in here, and, the parents and their kids can read along on their bedtime story and just learn a few things about the language and just have fun doing it.
That's awesome. As we mentioned, Buju Hello was recently announced as one of the 2025-2026 First Nation Communities Read Indigenous Literature Award winners. What does this recognition mean for you, Mangijik?
Honestly, it's a huge honor. I put so much work into this book, and everybody who worked on it put their whole heart into it, and to have it be recognized by Indigenous librarians and just Indigenous families across the country, it's a huge honor, and I'm just very proud of the book. Thanks.
And Mangijik, what is it about children's books that appeals to you the most?
Honestly, I just love the creativity and the imagination that you could put into the books. There's so much magic in them, and just being able to, read them with your kids, as a bedtime story. There's so much morals or teachings you could put into them, and teachings you could learn with your kids, and then, even after you read the books, you can sort of go over the story and see what your kids learn. For me, I just love illustrating them for the most part. It's just like a whole you could create whole worlds with it, so it's just really a really great medium to work with.
And you've collaborated with a number of writers, and now it has also just been announced that you're going to be working with journalist Duncan McHugh on a graphic novel. Can you tell us about that project?
It's basically a project about a residential school. It's about a survivor there, George Kenny. He actually wrote the book Indians Don't Cry. It's a poetry book. He's a really well-known writer. Duncan, he interviewed George and his son, Mike, and sort of transcribed their interviews and handed over to me a manuscript, and I'm just going to be illustrating it, and it's just them telling their experience with residential school and their sort of healing journey, sort of healing through hockey is the main sort of the avenue there. So it's also a hockey story, and their sort of experience with that. It's a really emotional story, but it's also a really inspiring one.
Very interesting. We'll have to keep an eye out for that when it comes out. Last question, Mangijik. Can you briefly tell us where we can buy a copy of your book, Buju Hello?
You can buy Buju Hello at Groundwood Books online, or they have a store in Toronto. But also, yeah, any really bookstore across the country has them. I've seen them in Toys R Us, I guess like Indigo Books, and any like smaller bookstores around you would have them as well. Yeah, they're I'd say probably my most popular book. So they're yeah, you could even find them in libraries and rent them out. So yeah, be sure to pick one up when you can.
Mangijik Pewis-Steckley is an award-winning Anishinaabe children's book illustrator and author. Mangijik, thank you for your time.
Miigwech, thanks so much.
The Toronto Blue Jays have evened the World Series after beating the Los Angeles Dodgers 6-2 in Game 4 on Tuesday night. Last night's win guarantees a Game 6 in Toronto this Friday. Game 5 is set for tonight in LA. Trey Savage will be back on the mound for the Jays, and Blake Snell starts off for the Dodgers. Go Jays, go.
Is there, and the Blue Jays win it.
And that's your APTN National News Daytime Newscast. We're back again in a few hours for your evening newscast. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.